This is Lessons in the Challenges of Leadership, the series that enables managers to achieve the remarkable. Podcast, video, short reads. Conceived, developed and presented by Siebert Neethling.
When we merged two parts of our business, one group was using Microsoft Office and the other was using the Google Suite. Whereas people strongly disagreed about the software, it was very easy to build the case that the future of our unified business should have one system. We were able to create a very clear vision of a business where everyone shared the same platforms, had to learn only one set of software, could simultaneously contribute to live documents and edit, etc. Once we had obvious and universal agreement on that, we could approach the choice of which to use. My first lesson to leaders is to very clearly develop your arguments for the why of change before the what and the how. In the previous two episodes on change, we looked at burning platforms, responses to change, change adoption, and the psychology of change resistance. All of that points to getting this why component right. Sometimes it's easy. A reason for change can be abundantly clear, like conventional taxis developing apps in response to the rise of Uber, or Canon cameras investing in digital photography because it was obvious that the market was going that way. But even these abundantly clear reasons for change are sometimes ignored or resisted. Think Nokia, BlackBerry, Kodak. It is harder if the reason for change is not that clear or is contested or has to push against emotional attachments. Whatever you do, don't rely on logic alone. Try to understand why there is emotional resistance and address those reasons. Probably the best example I have ever seen is the work of William Kirkby Jones in transforming defence housing in Australia. He faced resistance from developers, some government bodies and officials, and even from parts of the defence establishment as he tried to raise funds, approvals and support for his cause to improve the accommodation of members of the Australian Defence Force in the 1980s. In the face of resistance, he took to carrying in his pocket a single photograph. When he did not get the support he wanted, he showed it. This is what the typical house of a person who serves our country and who defends your safety looks like. And this is what you are going to help me change. It was incredibly impactful. The uninsulated, prefabricated homes with terrible amenities were an embarrassment. And his single picture did more than any spreadsheet, proposal, or speech could. I had the wonderful opportunity to facilitate a session where he was the guest speaker just a few years before he died. Here he is, next to then CEO of the organization he had established. The highlight of his talk was when he juxtaposed his original photo with a photo of the typical Defence Force house today. I am still moved when I think of his incredible achievement. That is leadership. Not all missions are as remarkable as that, and not all change imperatives can be communicated as succinctly. In selling the idea of change, develop benefits and advantages to the change, listen to people's frustration about the current state, and put solutions to those problems front and center. If you are relocating your head office, make sure the new location solves some old frustrations, like a lack of meeting space. Or give people a sweetener, like increased work flexibility in the new environment or additional benefits. If change only represents sacrifice, of course you're not going to get enthusiastic support. You should probably reconsider the change itself. But if negative change is absolutely inevitable, let's say you have to close down a division because its business case no longer stacks up. You still have to make the case, consider the impacts on others, and find ways to communicate the positives of the change. I've heard some shocking and disingenuous reasons for change. Leaders sometimes act entirely in self-interest and underestimate people's ability to see through that. If a change is good for the organization, for its clients, for the community, it is easier to persuade employees even if they don't benefit from it. But if change is only good for shareholders and all the leaders of the organization, it is hard to generate support if the employees don't benefit from it. My second suggestion is to get people involved in the change. In the software example I used earlier, we got the proponents of the two opposing sides to tell us what it is that they liked about their version. It became clear that there was a lot of misunderstanding about the lack of capabilities of the alternative. For example, someone thought that one was not very compatible for Mac computers, which might have been the case decades before, but not now. Others thought that their version had a live share option that was better than the other. By hearing from everyone, not only did they feel more involved, it helped us to clearly and honestly communicate what was going to be better about the system chosen and what would have to change for the others. No amount of internet research could have produced those outcomes. Now, in episode 2, I told you about strategy for a forestry company. The key question to employees was, now that you are going to be a company and not a government department, what kind of company do you want? Change resistance was quickly resolved, and the actual change process was that much better and was well supported. I always say to leaders that this is not democracy. It is simply a way to get the very best inputs to help you make the best decision. It is still your decision. The third suggestion is to apply the very best project management to the change process. Having won support for the change and even excitement, don't squander that by having a poorly planned transition. It is always good to plan and execute well, but it is much, much more important to do so when the psychology of change is involved. Mistakes get amplified very quickly, and the fragile support you might have created can easily be eroded if people lose confidence in your ability to extract the promised benefits from the change. Surprise and delight them by exceeding expectations. You risk a lot of credibility if you don't. The final suggestion originates in the work of the Swedish academic Mats Elvesson, who has done extensive research in culture change programs and their success rates. I paraphrase, but he finds that successful culture change programs have 3 things in common. 1, they are in lockstep with societal expectations. If the society in which you operate is becoming increasingly environmentally conscious and responsible, a change program that aligns with this will be more likely to succeed than one that goes the other way. And think of smoking as an example. Smoking rates have been coming down in most countries. When I was a young manager, people used to smoke in their offices and in meetings. In my working environments now, that is just entirely out of the question. If someone were to suggest a cultural change program to defend smokers' rights and allow smoking in the workplace again, it is doomed to fail. Second characteristic of successful programs is what Elvesson calls the grand technocratic project. A big culture change needs symbols of change and clear communication. Posters, newsletters, lanyards with change messaging, stress balls, screensavers, change champions. We sometimes find these amusing, but without such high-level symbolism and popularization of the change message, it often fails to get traction in organizations. On its own, the grand technocratic project is just show. But if you add the third characteristic, you have all 3 that really matter. It is called everyday reframing. As a leader, you have to educate people in your change. You have to reshape how people see their work and build change into material work situations, meetings, reviews, planning processes, analysis. All should reflect the change you are bringing into the organization. So this 4th suggestion is to have a holistic and complete approach to change. Link the change to the things that matter to people and what they support anyway. Make the change visible and high in symbolism, and make sure it becomes part of everyday activities and processes in the organization. There are so many examples that we can't discuss in a short video. Remember to follow or subscribe, and we'll send you additional free content.